Welcome to Making UI for Games, a video series in which I will be walking you through the process of how you can design custom UI assets for your games, as well as implement them into the professional video game engine Unity 3D. Hi, my name is Erica, a game developer with 3 years of experience using Unity while studying game development at Centennial College. I currently enjoy designing UI assets as a game UI artist and designer. And as a UI integrator or programmer, I work on implementing my UI art assets into the game engine, as well as making them function properly. As of right now, I use Adobe Photoshop to create my designs, so keep in mind that that is what you will be seeing in this video series. However, there are also many other alternatives available for creating designs and artwork, so use whichever program works best for you. In this video, I will be talking about practicing and studying game UI by creating your own game UI and UX designs from scratch. Specifically, I will walk you through the process of how I designed and implemented UI for player vitals in the form of a stamina wheel. This study and design is inspired by Breath of the Wild's UI for player vitals that floats above Link's head. The stamina wheel is a visual representation of the character's stamina, which is depleted whenever they perform certain actions which would make them tired, such as running, swimming, or climbing. To start off, I use Game UI Database to quickly find the screenshots of the game's UI to help refresh my memory of the design's visuals as well as how the UI functions. To focus solely on UI, I highly recommend working within a completed project or using a package. In this instance, I used Unity's 3D Game Kit. This helps to see how the UI looks within a game environment instead of just having gray boxes or placeholders. Keep in mind that this is a very specific study. I believe that it can be very easy to get caught up in other areas such as creating the character, adding the player input, adding animations, making an environment, and etc. And all of this extra work would only be there to support showing how our UI functions. With this package, there's already everything there for us, so we can focus on what we want to do, which is making the UI and making it function. This way, we won't get bogged down with worrying about the details of other aspects of game development. The 3D Game Kit is a free package made by Unity Technologies, and the package can be found on the Asset Store under Templates and Tutorials. Instead of following a tutorial to practice, I prefer diving headfirst into the work and seeing where it goes. While I do write notes on a few things that I know that I need, I tend to just work right away. Using Photoshop, I quickly created the visuals for how I want the stamina rings to look like. I start with creating the innermost ring for the stamina rings. As you can see, I use temporary bright colors in order for me to better see the different rings, instead of having the white against the transparent background or the white against the other different rings. For each ring, I make sure there's a little gap between each one. The finished UI component should be all 3 rings separate from each other, and all of them should be white, so that once we work in the game engine, we can change the colors in Unity and add the colors on top. After exporting all 3 rings, we can then import it into our project. This is the first look of our UI in the game. Over here, I just made it slightly larger so that I could see what I'm working with. In the beginning, I just set it so that the UI is at the center of the canvas. Here, I decided that I want the UI to be following the player. So this position is set to the player's position, which automatically places the UI at the character's feet. There is a slight jittering that I've noticed, so that is the main thing that I want to focus on fixing right away. I moved the UI above the player's head because that's where I want the position to be. However, there is still the jittering being seen when the player moves. Along with the vertical offset, I also added a horizontal offset in order to move the UI left to right if needed. Now, to fix the jitter, I decided to make the UI canvas set to world space. And now that it's set to world space, we no longer see that strange jittering motion. However, when I rotate the camera and move around, we can see that the rotation is following the player's rotation, and that's not what we want. We want the UI to look 2D or face the camera, so I would need to fix that. Over here, I'm rotating the camera in order to find which axis is the one facing the camera or the horizontal axis for the camera. And seeing the numbers move, I can see that it is the y-axis for the camera that I want the UI to be following. Here it is. The UI is now looking how I want it to look. It is rotating with the camera and not with the player. Now, throughout the work process, I always make slight adjustments as to the height or the size of the UI, and that's just all about the feel and where I want the placement or how large I want the UI to look. This will be changed later on, but as of right now, I end up tweaking it throughout in order to see what feels right. Next, I made it so that the UI is hidden unless the player is moving. Now I quickly made a player stat, which is the stamina, and this player stat, I want it to deplete as the player is moving. Make sure you add values to your variables in the inspector, or else nothing will happen. Over here, we can see that once we're moving, the stamina depletes a certain amount over a certain time period. I end up playing with the variables a little bit in order to change how quickly or how slowly the stamina depletes. We don't want it to be too quick or too slow. This can be adjusted later on, but I'm just playing with the values here. Next, I wanted to try adding the second and third rings. These extra rings, like in Breath of the Wild, the stamina is a player stat that can be upgraded as you progress in the game. So for my UI, I want it so that we can add an extra ring up to the 3 rings. Also, I realized that I didn't want the UI to only appear when the player is moving. I want the UI to also appear when the player is standing still, but the stamina is not 100%. So we would be able to see the stamina being restored. This is not something I realized until I started adding things into the engine and testing things out. Sometimes we know what we want to do, then we realize that there are some things that would work better for the user experience, and we add those things later on to make the feel of the game much better. Here I'm testing out the depletion once I add the second ring, and there were some issues of it not depleting correctly, and that is just a matter of making sure the math is correct. The issue was that the second stamina ring would reach the halfway point, and then the innermost stamina ring would then deplete, which is not what we want. We wanted the stamina to go through the second ring all the way down, and then only after that ring is all depleted, it would move on to the innermost ring and deplete from there. And that is just a matter of making sure all of the math makes sense and is what affects the depletion, and the UI visuals would reflect that. And the last thing that I wanted to add was different colors to show the state of how much stamina you have left. So I wanted it to be green and then slowly moving towards a red to show that you are very low in stamina. Color is a very easy way to show the state of the player vitals through UI. As you can see over here, I'm just trying to make it work so that it goes from green to an orange or a yellow, and then it goes to the red at certain points of the stamina ring. I end up adjusting the values a bit because either the red isn't showing for long enough, or I want the yellow to start at a certain point. That's just all about the feel as well, and tweaking the values. And there we have it. This is the final product. There could still be more done. I did not make it so that the character stops moving once the stamina stops, but this is the extent of my study, and this is what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to make a stamina wheel that represents player stamina, and I was able to do so. I highly recommend doing practices and studies like this, looking at UI from games that you like or popular UI in games to see what they do well and recreating that so you can practice your skills as a UI or a UX designer. And that's this video on making UI for games. Thank you so much for watching.